Let's talk about Demon in White. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. This is the first longer form video that I've made in a while. I've been doing a lot of reels. So I wanted to talk about Demon in White. This book I finished a few days ago. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was incredible. It's a third book of the Sun Eater series. If you know, you've read it. If you don't know, you should read it and come back to this video later on. So far, I think it's the best of the three that I've read so far. Howling Dark, I thought was really good. Demon in White, I think is better. There's a lot of really good bits to it. And I think I want to kind of break this video down into a few structures. So I want to talk about the passage of time and how Ruocchio manages to write that into the story and how it makes sense. As well as I want to talk about kind of the supernatural, giant cosmic story that's going on as well. I want to talk about a couple of the characters and just how they stood out to me or how they didn't stand out to me. And I want to talk about sort of like the magic, if you will, of the world. And I think that's kind of the things that I want to go through. Obviously, there's a lot of really good stuff. I think, again, if you care about spoilers, probably skip off. We're just going to dive right into it. The book is kind of split up into 4 sections as far as I can tell. You've got like the beginning where he's commissioned by the emperor to take his son Alexander on kind of a mission trip to say, hey, not a missions trip like a Christian missionary, but a mission trip to go find this lost group of soldiers, this legion, this lost legion. And so they go to this place, they interact with these bird people, and there's kind of a fun interaction there. And I think that is kind of where the story kind of starts going. Like the very, very beginning felt slow to me. And it had that feeling of like, okay, more time has passed since the last time we saw them. And they've gone through events that we didn't see. But we just have to trust that those events were not as interesting as the events in this book. And that's always kind of, I guess not, I shouldn't say always, the 2 books that it's happened in. It's been a little bit jarring to kind of get into that setting where it's like, okay, I'm telling you these things as if they actually happened, but they're not as interesting as what currently happened. So that's always an interesting thing. But getting to the bird part, getting to where they're actually like hunting down the legion, that's all interesting. I feel like that's kind of one section. Then they win. They have like a battle there, and they kind of get ambushed. And then they go back to Forum where the emperor is, and they have a bunch of drama. They interact with all of these, I don't know, like royals and all these higher up palatines. And that is its own section right there. You have this whole thing where Hadrian and Selene, the daughter of the emperor, and there's like, oh, I should marry you because then, that would be this alliance thing. And then you have these old heads who don't like Hadrian because he's this new young head, and he might be like against chantry, and he might be evil or something, or possessed of like a daimon or whatever. So you have that whole drama right there, and there's like attempts on his life. And you have like this interaction with the empress, the emperor's wife, and all that stuff is also really good. There's a really cool fight there, and then you go to them getting expelled, basically, or kind of getting sent on this library mission to go find information about the Quiet. Hadrian he's sort of revealed to be like, he has that fight in the Colosso. He stops the High Matter blade with his hand. And it seems like, oh my goodness, he's the chosen one. He's, got this magic or something. But really, it's just that he has adamant in his bones, okay? And we know that, and Hadrian knows that, and some of the other characters in the book know that. But a lot of the people at large don't know that. And so it further builds Hadrian's story as this, like, unkillable, half-mortal entity, kind of. So anyways, because of that, to kind of clear some distance with everything, the engagement is kind of thrown off with Selene. Hadrian is sent to the library planet, and he just spends a lot of time, him and Velka, looking through all of the information that the Scholiasts have of old Earth and of the time before our current time, right? And that all is interesting as well. Like, each of these sections has their own good bits and their own interesting bits, and they all flow at their own paces. And they're just it's all well written, but it feels like separate sections, right? So in the library, they find the secret rocket, and they speak to that artificial intelligence called Horizon, and that's a cool scene. And we learn about she tells them that time for some entities in the universe flows backwards as much as for the humans it flows forward. So you can only go forward in time. You can get faster, and you can go faster than the speed of light and go forward in time, but you can't go backwards in time. Whereas other entities can go backwards. Some can go sideways, and some can just go up and down, and all dimensions of different ways to travel through time. And so that's interesting. And they get this clue to go to this planet where they've had more interactions with the quiet, I guess. So then they go there. And I feel like that's still part of the library thing, because it's kind of like the discovery part of the story. They go there, and Hadrian has this big storyline, this big quest part with the quiet, and he interacts. And he has this mountaintop scene, and he's like hiking and climbing and scraping himself, and he sees how time works for the quiet, and he gets this clue: hey, go to this battle, and you can get ahead of them, because we have information that you don't have. And they also reveal that every time Hadrian has like died, or especially on Vergassus, when he like dies, that was them like moving in another Hadrian who didn't die, who didn't succumb to the same, like getting his head cut off. So that's an interesting thing. And then we move to the final battle. We get to Berenike, and that's like 150 pages of the book is Berenike. So that's long, and it some parts of it are planning and setting up the story and the fight. Some parts of it are actually the fight itself. A large part of it is the fight itself. And then it kind of abruptly ends with like, hey, there's going to be more. Obviously, we've got to do more things. Obviously, we didn't kill the big bad. We've got to keep moving on. And as this book has gone on, Hadrian's seen like his end, or his potential end. And that's what he's kind of realizing. He's like, this is a potential end, these things that I'm seeing. And so those are kind of like the big four like sections of the story, I think. And each of them has their own merits and their own value, and they're all written in their own like cool way. I think all of them are good. It's all interesting. Like there's not really, in each of those sections, there's like a highlight that stands out. It's like, oh, that was really the cool thing. The fighting that initial chimera with Alexander, and even like meeting the Urktani, which are like the bird people. That's all interesting, right? Of that first section. The second section in Forum, you have like the 3 attempts on his life, and you have the Inquisition is interesting, and you have like that battle with the prince's retainer. Like they keep a swordsman, a Jadian swordsman, on hand, and he duels Hadrian. That's an interesting, good fight. The scene with the Empress is like one of the worst scenes I've ever read in my entire life, just because she's so debasing to Hadrian, and and obviously you can read other terrible scenes in books where humans treat other humans badly, but that just was jarring to me, because I was like, oh my gosh, this just, it stood out. And so those things are pretty good, and those stand out in that section. The library stuff, that whole thing is kind of cozy in a way. And then you have like the secret breaking into the room, and you have the alien, or the AI rather, interacting with the AI Horizon. That stands out. The whole final battle is just kind of, it stands out on its own. And so that having laid out all that gets me to a couple of things that I want to mention in talking about this book. The passage of time is something that Ruocchio has to deal with, because the way that they travel across the universe, the expanse of the universe, it's so vast and so big. And, when they're on the library planet and they get the call, hey, there's this battle that's happening, we need to go there. They're talking about 60 years worth of travel. So they're just going to go and fugue, and they're going to be there for 60 years before they get to this other part of the galaxy. That's insane. 60 years, right? So by the time we get to the end of this book, I think Hadrian's like close to 200 years old. And we kind of have to like brush that past. We kind of have to move through that. And I think Ruocchio does a pretty good job. And by the time we get to this third book, you really believe that time has passed. And it's sort of like, we would think, okay, I got to drive across the country. It's going to be a 12-hour drive. Like, that's a long time. Or, I'm going to take this trip, and it's going to take me a week to get there. I'm going to just be kind of mosey along the way. They're kind of viewing decades or, centuries, like in a different way than we are. And so I think in this one, he does the best. Or maybe it's just because I've read 3 books now, and I'm accepting that that's just the way that time has to work, that they go into fugue, and then they wake up in 60 years later, and like potentially tons of people that they knew died, but they also have ways to extend their life. And so I think he's done the best of explaining it and kind of making me accept it in this story. So that's what I'll say about that. I think in interacting with the quiet on the mountain, he gets this idea that there are these like eldritch entities. It's very like Cthulhu-esque. You have like wings and fangs and darkness and shadow and tentacles even, and like human sacrifices, and that's all very weird. And I don't know, I don't know where I fully stand on that, because I think on one hand it's like that's kind of typical. You look at something like Warhammer, where you have, the, I don't know that much about Warhammer, but what I, a little bit that I do know, you have like the warp, I think is what it's called, where all of these like strange evil like god entities live, and they're like, their chaos magic is what allows the psychers to have magic in like the Warhammer side, like the non-warp side of things, and they also can like travel through the warp to go really fast. It's something like that, right? And if you're a Warhammer head, you're going to correct me. Please do, because I would love to know more about Warhammer. But I think that's like, and even like Lovecraft, we think, okay, what is beyond the stars? Well, it's this weird, scary monster that you can't even like really comprehend what it is. It's like in the shadows. It's multidimensional. It appears to us in a way that we can vaguely understand, but it's still so complex and so convoluted that it leads only to madness. That's an interesting thought. Again, I don't know. I guess I didn't expect it to be in this story, and we'll see maybe if there's more of that like eldritchness going on. And the quiet is like an egg or something in a church. So there's a lot of like interesting mystical stuff going on with like the science of it. So I think it's interesting. I'll be very curious to see where it goes. But reading that part, I was like, okay, this is, maybe a little bit of like the science magic that, seems to go sometimes with this like super far out future. This is like 20,000 years in the future or something of our actual like current day Earth. And we have these like really bizarre dimensional beings. So I'm not sure where I feel on it. We'll have to see where the rest of the series goes. If it gets addressed, we'll see. We'll see what he does. I think character-wise, Hadrian is pretty much Hadrian throughout. Valka is very much Valka. You have like, there's a couple of really good scenes between the two of them. There's a scene where he thinks she's breaking up with him, and he's like, "I literally can't survive without you." That's a really nice scene. There's a scene where Saran leaves, and I feel like my earlier complaints with the characters in this book is that his like early group of like Colosso fighters on a mesh that he takes with him are like, these are my best friends, these are my group. Like, I never felt that they were that close to him, because again, he was interacting with like the king of the Cielsen, and he's interacting with the king of all mankind, the emperor, and these like really, really good ship captains like Captain Corvo. It makes sense for him to interact with her, and you have these, everybody else, I was like, I don't really care, Krim, Polino, Saran, Gen. I just don't, it's like they're kind of like the peasants that he like left to move on, and then he comes back to, he's like, hey guys, we're still best friends, and they're like, yeah, we are still best friends. I don't know, you've changed a lot, they haven't changed, but I feel like in this book, because he kind of goes, hey, everybody's like a lot older, and they've all gotten things done to them to make themselves seem younger, so they're kind of all new, and now they've all been elevated in status because of my elevated status. That I accept a little bit more. And so when he does interact with these characters, and it's like, oh, there is something here that is actually real. And so I do believe it more. I do believe the side characters more in this book. I did want to see more Basander Lin. I think his character is really cool and really interesting. And I loved their interactions in Howling Dark. Thought I was brilliant. I would love to see more of it here. In this one, he doesn't show up until the very, very end of the book, like that final battle. And he's scared of Hadrian. He's like, I know what happened on Vergassus. I'm scared of him because I'm afraid that he is what he says he is. So that there's an interesting interaction, interesting dynamic there. But I would have liked to see more of Basander Lin. And so I guess I shouldn't say I know. I think we'll get more of him in future books, and I'm looking forward to that, because I do like the character, and I like that he's this very good soldier, a good general, a good fighter, but he's kind of like a foil for Hadrian in a way, with becoming less of a foil as the series goes on, it seems like. So I would like to see more Basander Lin. That's like one of my small character critiques. And then the last thing I want to talk about, and this is probably already too long of a video, but I don't know that I have to cut that much. That's kind of nice. How does infinite possibility work? So the idea is there's kind of an infinite possibility of choices, an infinite way that these like threads of time can go before they braid themselves together. I do like that image, by the way. It's like this string that's going, and you have all these like frayed things that could possibly be pulled in and become a part of the main story, or they're just going to be frayed off and they're not actually going to attach. I think that's an interesting way of looking at time like that. And so the way that we're seeing it in the story is Hadrian. Let's say I'm Hadrian right now. There's a version of me that stops the recording right now and starts reading a book. There's a version of me that stops the recording right now and picks up my coffee cup and starts drinking. There's a version of me that keeps talking for another hour. I, as Hadrian, can look at like some of these possibilities, and I can pull them into my possibility and kind of go that way. And we see that happen a couple times. To get Bastien Durand to believe in what he is and what he needs to do, he lets himself get shot in the chest, but he allows himself to, like, another one that doesn't get shot in the chest kind of like take his place, and they have this like shared infinite possibility consciousness. And so he's aware that there's like a path that didn't have him get shot, and that's what he is now. And then the same thing with like the very final scene where the bad guy, Siriani Doriaka, I probably said that badly, but the Cielsen, Prince of Princes, where he's like shooting his lasers down at Hadrian on the planet. That's a great scene, by the way. It's a fantastic scene. And I'm not, again, this is not a critique. I'm just curious as to how we understand the science fiction of this. But he's shooting his lasers down at Hadrian, and Hadrian is like walking away every single step, every single movement, replacing himself thousands of times over with versions of himself that don't get shot and don't get hurt. And it's really, really cool. It's a really, really cool scene. It's really well written. Again, Ruocchio is fantastic. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's a master. But it's just interesting because are all of these alternate versions ones where the only difference is that he takes the next step and everything else is the same? And so like when he leaves and Polino is like, hey, I'm going to go with you. And Hadrian's like, no, you're not going to go with me. And so he makes the guards keep Polino back. And then he goes forward and then he gets shot and doesn't die. There's all like the versions, all of like thousands of versions that survive to get him through that laser fire are all versions where Polino is the same as he was. So like we're all lining up. And I guess if there's infinity, then yes, that infinity is true. But wouldn't there just be one where like the laser doesn't fire? And why not moving the infinity to one where the bad guy's not even there, or they defeat the bad guys or something? It's hard to grab. It's hard to wrap your head around like time and infinity. And I don't know that you really should. And maybe I'm just completely misunderstanding it. But there is something about just reading it and being entertained. And I really am entertained by this. I really am just reading it and enjoying it. But it's always curious to me to think like, what is actually going on behind the scenes? What is actually happening? And sometimes it's just like, I'm not really sure if that's how it makes sense. So those are my long thoughts on Demon in White. Christopher Ruocchio, bravo, sir. Very, very good. I'm excited to continue reading the series. I have the rest of the books, barring book 7. So I'll probably read the next 3, which are all shorter than Demon in White. Demon in White, I think, is longest, maybe outside of Shadows Upon Time, which is book 7. I think that one is actually technically the longest. But up until then, I think Demon in White is the longest. So yeah, we're gonna get through those at some point. I've got book 4 on my desk here. It's 500 pages, whereas this was like 750 pages. So it's a good chunk less. Maybe it's like 600 pages. I don't know. Either way, it's shorter. So not that shorter is better or worse. It's just different and quicker for me to get through. But I'm enjoying the series so far. This is one of the greatest science fiction stories I've read probably in a while. And not that I've read that much, but I'm really enjoying it. And thanks for watching. If I should make more longer form stuff like this and less reels, let me know. If you're following me and you've only seen my reels and you're like, man, this guy is actually talking for more than 2 minutes, let me know. I don't know, whatever that means. And we'll make more of these and we'll keep reading. And I'm enjoying the craft. So thanks for following along, and we'll see you in the next video.